It's time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this fabulous episode of the Maturepreneur podcast. I am your hostess with the mostest, Jeanette Anderson, and I am super excited to have, and I know I always say that, but I usually am super excited because I picked these people very specifically for you from a whole bunch of people who apply and a whole bunch of people that I've met, but who I don't invite onto the show because they either don't have the expertise, they don't have the chutzpah, they don't have the heart, or they don't have the particular issues or topics that you want to hear about. So I am super excited to have Carol Cho here with us today. So hi, Carol. I'm glad you're here.
Hi, Jeanette. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for today's conversation.
And today we're going to be talking about wealth and how to create it, how to not lose it, what the hell do you do now in this tumultuous situation that we're in? If you're already 65 and broke, are you screwed? Basically, all sorts of conversations and comments like that. But first, I'll tell you who Carol is so you can know why she is here and what her expertise is. So you can decide that she is the right person to listen to. So Carol Cho is a dedicated financial advisor at IRC Wealth, an independent wealth management firm that partners with high potential and high earning individuals and families create lasting wealth. With a firm belief in that true wealth transcends mere numbers, Carol's passionate about cultivating a harmonious relationship with finances. If only. She sees money as a powerful tool to fulfill life's purpose and is committed to guiding her clients in using their wealth to achieve their dreams and aspirations. Now, Carol is an expert, and there's a long list of accolades. I'll just give you a couple, and we'll put the rest in the show notes. She holds influential positions within key organizations like the Financial Planning Association of New Jersey, the director of major conferences, an advisory council member for the $1 Million Women Fund, sits on steering committees for Asian boss ladies, like a lot of cool organizations, and in a real advisory and support role, which combines her expertise in financial empowerment with active social engagement. So striving to create impactful changes for both individual lives and the wider community. All right, so that's just a little bit about her, tip of the iceberg, I'm sure. And now what I really want to know is, tell me something about you that we wouldn't guess, that would surprise people, maybe even your friends. What's something?
Yeah. I do want to clarify something because at the beginning you had mentioned high performing, high earning, but I want to clarify it's high performing, high potential. And that's important because notice that I didn't say high net worth, right? We at our firm, we're looking for high performing, high potential individuals and families. And so we'll talk more about that a little bit later. But yes, to share something with your audience.
Yeah, important.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so tell us something about you we wouldn't guess.
I used to fly paragliders, not parasailing where you're tied to a boat, but a paraglider. So I'm flying in the air, and that fueled my desire to live abroad. And I've lived in 3 different countries, have traveled to over 30, and just picked up various languages along the way.
Cool. How many various languages?
Spanish, Macedonian. I was born in the US, but my parents are from South Korea, so I often joke that I speak Konglish. I could probably speak better Korean, but yeah.
Okay, good. And Macedonian, now there's a language that doesn't come into play real often, I wouldn't think. Is that something that's quite common?
I don't think it's quite common. Population less than 2 million. It's similar. They use the Cyrillic alphabet. So it would sound to most people like Russian. So it looks like you're reading Russian. It sounds like Russian. But I love speaking Macedonian. It's just like music to my ears. Yeah.
Cool. And I would never have guessed that. That's an interesting language to have and place to have lived and so forth. And I love paragliding as well. Although the times that I've done it, someone was strapped to my back. And so I was it's like sitting in an armchair in the sky. It's just
Yes.
cool and so kind of relaxing most of the time until you have to land, and then sometimes not so much. So we should probably compare, takeoff and landing stories. Anyway,
I
so
love learning that about you.
I
That's so cool.
I've pretty much done everything except bungee jumping because I just know I'll black my eyes with my boobs if I do that. But I've done parasailing and high ropes course and rappelling and parachuting, and yeah, I've jumped off of and out of way too many things to be sensible. And paragliding is my favorite of all of them because it's just
Oh,
lovely and peaceful. Or at least, again, it is when there's a guy behind me who knows what he's doing.
yes.
So that you do it on your own is amazing. Okay, so let's talk about why you got into this business because we love finding out your why. Why are you a financial planner? I was a financial planner for 2.5 years. God help me and my clients. And just during 2008, by the way, big crash in the marketplace. So it was a very challenging time to be a financial planner.
Yeah.
But why do you care about supporting people with their wealth? What do you think your why or your purpose in life is?
I think my purpose in life is to take the experience and mistakes that I've made and do what I can to ensure that other people don't make the same mistakes that I made. So I'll give you one example, for instance, like, I am a divorcee and I made the decision to not really fight for perhaps like my share or to advocate for myself better. And so it left me completely penniless and I had to start all over, all from scratch. And when I think about that, I was young, first of all, but I wish that I had better support, better resources, better information, just a better network to advocate for me because I couldn't, right? And so that is one of my biggest whys. And ultimately, I believe that when women have both wealth and confidence and the great support, right, their community, it has an incredible impact. Not only does it change her life, but it has a ripple effect, right? Like when women have both wealth and confidence, it changes the world, as my colleague says. Wealthy women change the world. And so my passion and purpose is to help put as much wealth into the hands of as many women as possible. And not just through investing, right? But by helping them heal their relationship with money, right? Like I said, I've lived through divorce, trauma, identity challenges as a daughter of immigrants, like that carries with it its own stories of money and beliefs. And I don't want other people to feel alone in the wealth journey. You don't have to do this alone. And so that's why this work is deeply personal to me.
Okay. So, and like for many people, a lot of what we're doing and how we express, or live into our why now comes out of our own personal challenges and blocks and barriers. But it also sounds like I believe that our why often goes back to, well, always goes back to our childhood and what some of those original things that I call them the wounds that we're healing and the things that we long for others and ourselves. And so I really hear the longing for people to not be put into a situation where they're on their own and get disadvantaged, get screwed over, have challenges, lose things, don't have the support that they need.
Yeah.
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 So let's talk a bit first about the word wealth, because that might be scaring some people off. They might be thinking that we're only talking about those of you who already have millions of dollars or something. But let's talk about wealth. What do you mean by wealth? And in this conversation, what does it mean? How does it play out in terms of maturepreneurs and people who are older?
Yeah. I would like to expand the definition of wealth. I think instantly we think of the dollar sign in your account, but wealth can be defined in terms of, yes, perhaps the actual money that's in your account, but I also think of wealth as your health wealth, right? Your community and family wealth. So there's different faces to wealth. So that's one way I try to help my clients think of wealth, right? Because if we just focus on one, oftentimes people feel like they don't have enough of something. So when we try to think of everything as a whole, I think it creates a much fuller life for people. I want to remind people, and I tell my clients this all the time too, like money is a tool. It's a tool that can be used to help you live your life, fulfill your values. And what that life looks like, it's not just the money that you spend, but the money that you use to create memories, to create change, to move your body, to be with friends and family. So I think we need to work harder to expand how we define wealth and what money means to us and how we want to use it. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, one of the things that I mentioned kind of at the beginning is let's kind of cut to where some people's minds and hearts are right now, because there's been a lot of volatility in the market created. I know you're in the US, I'm in Canada. There's been a lot of volatility in the market that is impacting from the current administration in the US. That is impacting people's retirement income, impacting their wealth, their investments. There's been a lot of volatility in the marketplace. What are you telling your clients who are scared right now?
Yeah. So totally normal. Whenever there's a market downturn, it definitely causes a little bit of anxiety and stress, right? Money is emotional. As a behavioral financial advisor, I often say money is not in the math department, but in the psychology department, right? And so money is feelings, money is emotional. And I'd say, a couple of things like during these uncertain times. First of all, the only certainty in life is uncertainty, right? Yes, it feels different right now these days because it is different. But at the same time, a lot of things are still the same. For instance, volatility. That's what's same, right? And so I think as a financial advisor and a behavioral financial advisor, when I'm talking to my clients, I remind them, okay, remember that we came up with the plan during times where cooler minds prevailed, when we were at emotional neutral, and we had discussed what your long-term goals are. And we created a plan knowing that along the way, there's going to be things that are going to throw curveballs at us, whether they're self-induced by the decisions that we make along the way, whether they're things that happen to us that, we couldn't really control, whether like the market or politics or perhaps job change or job loss. But we created a plan knowing that this journey was going to be filled with a lot of hiccups and challenges and also a lot of opportunities. So what I like to say to my clients, has any of that changed?
Right.
And I mean, more often than not, people are saying, no, nothing's changed. I'm not trying to retire tomorrow, or yes, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to retire next year. And the clients of ours that are close to retirement or in retirement, because we know that they're making that transition, we've started to make those adjustments and tweaks, not only to their investments, but also to kind of audit what their spending is like, right? You're going into retirement. And so being a little bit more mindful about what the spending is incredibly important. Being mindful of spending and budgeting, it's interesting. It's something you have to do pretty much your entire life. Like you have to be mindful of your cash inflows and outflows when you're building your wealth. And then when you hit financial freedom or when you get to retirement, it doesn't just end there, right? If you want to maintain financial freedom and security or maintain the retirement lifestyle that you desire, it will also, you will have to continue to monitor your spending, your cash inflows and outflows. So that skill or habit doesn't end.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's part of awareness. And I want to talk to you soon about mindset and that side of it. And remind me to get you to define behavioral financial advisor, because it's super important. But just staying on this topic for a moment, one of the statistics that most people are not aware of, and that I am part of this segment, is that 65% of North Americans, and it's actually pretty universally true around the world, cannot afford to retire. So they cannot live on the income or the retirement savings or whatever that they have. They have to create additional income. And they may be anywhere from food and housing insecurity to simply not having, like having to downsize or not having the lifestyle that they want or would like. But in most cases, they have to make money to pay bills in some way. So given that, that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to stop investing or saving or building wealth, even when we don't have money, does it? Or how do you think about that? Because there's a lot of people when they hear that, they go, oh, well, then they just are in survival mode. And some are. But does that mean that we shouldn't also still be saving and investing and doing that?
Yeah, and
I know
you
it's
know,
a question.
yeah, because there are so many, there's definitely a handful of the population that are really struggling. Like you said, they're in survival mode. And there might not be very many options for those individuals to make or take. And there's so many parts of that whole equation that you and I and they don't have control over, right? Like you're talking about just lots of government systems, and you're talking about lots of inequities and inequalities that we don't have control over. And but when I think about what you said there, I have a family member, my partner and I, we have a family member that we are supporting, right? Because that person is only on Social Security. And so, we are supporting her. And it's kind of where hopefully people have community and family and friends that they can lean on for support. When I work with clients that have aging parents, I ask them, have you talked to your parents about what they may or may not need as they get into retirement, right? Like what, because it is very real, that sandwich generation, having to take care of our aging parents as well as our children, as well as ourselves. So it's really tricky. Now, you had said, should they stop saving, investing, and all that? It depends, because I imagine if one is having a difficult time simply paying the bills, right? Just surviving the day to day. It's investing is not the question that they need to be asking themselves, right? And that happens a lot too. People come to me asking me, okay, what do I need to do to invest? And really, we need to look at, okay, how is money coming in? How is the debt managed? Do you have some savings? All that needs to be looked at before you can even think about investing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get it and I agree. But I remember even when I was very young, um, back when I was smart about this, I would take, even though I didn't make much, and like young, like 18, 19, just moved out of home, first jobs, etc. And I would take a little bit of every paycheck, even if it was $20, and put it in a little savings account. It grew slowly enough for me to be able to buy my first car about 4 years later. But had I not done that, I wouldn't have been able to do, that. But I had no money, but I did it first before the other things got paid, and I made it work. I'd always fit, like it's kind of like time expands for how long you give it and the project and so forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are some who can't afford it. There are some who can still do that in terms of for their longer term retirement goals. They can still be supporting that and moving towards that. And some that have more money and could use some help with just figuring out how to optimize what they have, how to move
Yep.
it, how to access it, how to use it better, which is where someone like you comes in, and very valuable to get those objective perspectives on it and knowledgeable perspectives on what works, what's available, what are the options. So that's a financial advisor, but what's a behavioral financial advisor?
Yeah, so behavioral financial advice is the study of traditional finance with neuroscience and psychology. And so it's just recognizing that money is emotional. And it doesn't replace traditional finance, but I would say that it combines traditional practical financial planning with deep work around money mindset, inherited beliefs. So it's me helping my clients build their financial independence and creating joy through comprehensive planning, tax strategies, investment management, but understanding that at the end of the day, we are human beings that experience a rainbow of emotions, and that emotions are always present when we're making decisions.
Right.
And when they're present, when we're making financial decisions, can result in good ones or not so good ones. So I'll give you an example, right? Like stress is, one of the leading cause of heart attack, stroke, heart disease. And the number one cause of stress is money and finance.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can help our clients reduce the amount of stress, then it would result in better decision making. And hopefully that better decision relates to their finances. So for example, when you're stressed out, right? Your ability to there's a lack of oxygen that flows through your body and a lack of oxygen that gets into your prefrontal cortex,
Right.
which is responsible for rational thought, analysis, and choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are stressed out and there's a lack of oxygen going on there and you don't have the ability to think clearly, then your chances of making a poor decision increases.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you make that poor decision, what happens is it causes more stress because you've made that poor decision. And it's just this vicious cycle. So in behavioral financial advice, we kind of talk about, okay, how do we help our clients manage their emotions so they can make better decisions? And I'm not saying emotions are bad, right? Emotions are what makes this life worth living and beautiful and exciting.
Yeah.
But just to remind people, okay, how are you thinking and feeling as you're trying to navigate some of these decisions as it relates to your money?
Well, and I love you said the word joy in conjunction with money, because that's not most people's experience, even those who have a lot of it. In fact, I know a lot of really miserable millionaires, and a lot of very happy people that might be considered poor, or, don't have a lot
Yes.
of so those emotions are a lot about how we look at money, wealth, and security, and all of the things that go with it, and a lot about our beliefs around money. What would you say are, and this might be where you can provide us with some practical tips. What are
Mm-hmm.
the biggest blocks and barriers in terms of beliefs around money? And what can we do about those? So you work with lots of clients, have lots of limiting beliefs around money, that pop up. What are some of those limiting beliefs, and what are some alternative perspectives?
Yeah, so the one that's the most common is that scarcity mindset, right? That there's not enough money or resources,
Mhm.
which before we even go into what that results in, you have to kind of first ask yourself, what is your relationship with money like, right?
Mhm.
What emotions or feelings come up when you think about money?
Mhm.
And where do you think it's come from? Because when I say we have money stories, like those are money stories that we've experienced growing up, observing the people around us. So our parents, our teachers, and we're learning things without them even really teaching us.
Right.
But I think that money story extends even beyond what we've experienced, but what we've inherited from our parents because of their experiences,
Mhm.
right? And so, for example, I'll give you a story. Like my dad, he grew up incredibly poor, uh, was born during the Korean War. He would tell me stories like how he had one bowl of rice a day, and that kind of poverty really impacted the way he thought about money and how he raised us. He was incredibly frugal, right? And saved every single penny. Barely graduated high school, by the way. Like my mom didn't graduate or didn't go to college because in that time it wasn't believed that women should go get an education. So both my parents did not graduate college. They graduated high school. However, they both actually paid off their home in 17 years. They never carried debt. and they both were able to retire early from their blue collar job working in a factory, which you would think would teach me that you do not have to have a degree in finance or a PhD in economics to be financially free, right? But no, because the messages that I received and absorbed was that money is tight, you have to save every penny, there's no joy in this.
Yeah.
And so you have to figure out where your money story comes from. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, is this still serving me? And how do I want to rewrite that story?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And we do get to rewrite the stories. We're not stuck with them.
We're
And
not.
is really working with people who are aware that their stories, not the truth, like Carol, like me, like coaches who really support you in becoming aware of, reframing those beliefs so that you can tell a better, more productive story, and then living into that new story in a way that creates habits and behaviors that will change the results. And so, how do you help people with that in terms of changing kind of that scarcity story around? What are some tips that you have for perhaps shifting how we see scarcity or how to get out of scarcity? Because I think that's a very common state for a lot of people.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, one, it's to understand that we're hardwired that way. That's kind of part of the BFA, the behavioral financial advice side of it. So just reminding people, hey, we're like this because we're human. We're hardwired this way to have a scarcity mindset, to naturally be in survival mode because that's how we're wired, right? So to switch gears to go from survival to thriving mode, it definitely takes more effort, more conscious effort. And I think one is, yes, right? Like, how do you want to rewrite your story? That's like the mindset piece. But really, to get practical and tactical is to make the decision that you are no longer going to be a passive participant in your financial life, that you're going to be an active one. What does that mean? It means taking your head out of the sand, so to speak, and getting real clarity around the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. So for a lot of people, it's them looking at their credit card statements or their bank statements or the budget for the first time or the first time in a long time. And it might feel scary, but I promise you, it's not that terrible. And to remind people that when you look at those numbers on your bank account statements or your credit card statements or whatever it is, they're just numbers. Mm-hmm. They don't define you, right? It doesn't define your worth or who you are. It's just data. So getting really clear in the numbers and telling yourself, okay, this is just data and it's going to inform some future decisions that I need to make. Mm-hmm. But don't tie your worth to it at all.
That is so critical. And I really, really want to just pause for a moment. And, money doesn't define your value or your self-worth. We let it, but it doesn't, not in reality. And I've gone through periods, and not too long ago, where because business was down or because I was, challenged financially and I wasn't making the money I was used to, I had these thoughts of, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore. Maybe I should be doing something else. And I'm a fraud and so forth and so on. Now, I don't go into that cycle very often because I've done a lot of work over the years, but I still do at times when I start to wrap up my identity in my bank account. And that's not who we are. That's not where our value lies, but it's our society really does try and tell us that who you are as a human being is closely tied to how much you have, what lifestyle you have, what purse you carry, etc.
So social media doesn't help, and if you're a business owner, a solopreneur, a serial entrepreneur, or as one of my friends says, an omnipreneur, you've got multiple businesses. Yeah. It's hard to detach yourself from those numbers because your business is your baby or your babies, and it's your livelihood, and it means so much. So yes. And by the way, like, I fall prey to this all the time. I'm in the finance industry. Like, I am constantly being defined by my numbers. So, it's normal. It's just to remind people it's normal. And so what I try to do myself is, okay, so that's one way that I am being judged, but And I can't change the system. We have to always figure out like what it is that you can control and what you can't control. So what are other ways that I can judge myself? What are other ways that you can judge yourself, to determine, your value or your impact, or what makes your life filled with purpose and meaning? And it could be like, Jeanette, like how many people did you impact today with the work that you do? Right. This morning, I got a voice message from one of my clients who was feeling incredibly depressed and discouraged with what she thought was not making progress fast enough.
Right.
And I just sent her a voice message back to be like, no, you are making incredible progress. And I'm not just saying it to lift you up, like literally you are, because you're making these little baby steps, positive, active steps towards creating a better, secure future.
Right.
But then beyond that, who are the people that you connect with? Like your community is also part of your worth. I don't have to find a better word than worth, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. How we see ourselves and our and I don't like using value either, because I don't think it's connected at all to our intrinsic value, but how we show up in the world.
Yes.
And so let's go back to stewardship for a moment, because I am one of those people that resists accounting, bookkeeping, numbers, etc. Never was my strength. In fact, I had to fight to drop out of Math 30 in high school, because I just hated it so much. I did get 100% in social studies and, and excel in languages and English and all other things. But look, anyway, and ironically, I'm really good with like I could count, and had my first business when I was 5, right? Like I could make money. But I am not a good steward of my money, because I typically do what you said and stick my head in the sand and don't like it and avoid it and hire bookkeepers who don't do a good job, but I don't know that they're not doing a good job because I'm not watching. What advice do you have for people who are like me, who are numbers adverse, but who want to have that sense of control? How do we make that transition? What's the easiest, well, maybe not easiest approach, but what are some of the steps to go from head in the sand to feeling like I'm large and in charge?
I might be biased, but perhaps speaking with a coach, an advisor. I'm biased, but there's financial coaches there, right? And there's financial therapists as well. So thinking about getting support, this idea that we have to be able to figure this out on our own, I think is what causes a lot of anxiety. And I get it. It's money. We use it every day. And you would think that for something that we use every day, we should be an expert at it, right? Like how many hours do you need to be an expert? What is it, 10,000? I think we've all used money for more than 10,000 hours, and we're not really experts at it, are we? But it's the other thing to think about too, is to be a little bit more clear and specific of where the challenges are. And I kind of like to divide money into different categories in terms of how you make money, how you save money, how you spend money, and how you invest money. And they all kind of take different skills. Mm-hmm. And so when people say they're bad at money, I want to be like, or, there's an area that they don't like, I want to get more specific about it, right? Because there are people who are incredibly great at saving money, but they're not really good at investing money, right? And then there might be people out there that really enjoy investing money and doing the research, but they might not be making money. And so it's understanding that it takes different skills. So depending on where you need help will determine obviously the kind of support that you get. A lot of my clients are quite good at the making of the money and the saving the money, but they have, or spending the money, I should say, but they need a little bit of support in the saving and the investing. Right. And that's where I come in. Yeah. To give them a little bit more education and knowledge.
Probably many of us on here right now. Speaking of the spending the money, I just want to throw this in here because this is something recent for me. And we were talking earlier about how, if you're on Social Security in Canada, it's called Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security. Chances are very good you're at or below the poverty level. So my income from the government is $1,300 a month. That wouldn't even cover rent in Calgary for a 1-bedroom, maybe a 1-bedroom basement suite. But so you can't live on that. But
No.
we get a lot more creative about how we think about things just outside of the realm of money, because wealth and financial well-being is not just 100% about those pieces of papers. So, for example, I just decided I wanted to do a speaking tour and was trying to decide where to live because I had been renting a whole house for 9 months. They decided to sell the house. So now I'm like, okay, do I go back to mobile living? What do I want to do? Where do I want to rent? What do I want to do? Because I live a mobile lifestyle. I'm polyhomorous. So I
I
just
love
it's time to go back to full blown mobile. And so I'm doing house and pet sitting in various different cities throughout Western Canada so that I can support being in those cities for 3 to 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and do speaking engagements and do public workshops and so forth. And one of the other benefits of this is I paid rent in January, February, March. I have no rent or mortgage or accommodation expense between now and January 15th, 2026. So there are ways that we can look at spending differently, but that often requires us to get out of what we know, which is
it.
why it's so important to go talk to someone else who has a perspective that's different than ours, because we only know what we know, right? And people are quite surprised when I talk about my mobile, like it's like they would never occur to them that that's an option, right? Or a way to save money. Now I'm doing it predominantly for the speaking tour, but it's also and to because I love being mobile most of the time. But it also saves me a shit ton of money, right? So that's really good because that's important to manage. What are some just in terms of that notion of how we think about money, spend,
Yeah.
outgo? What are some other tips that you have around how to think about money, wealth?
Yeah. First of all, I want to kind of reflect back to you what I heard. You are incredibly resourceful and creative. Um, I, and I think that's one of the key differentiators is, and that goes to your mindset, Jeanette. This is truly a testament to your mindset. Is you are so creative and resourceful as you're going into the second phase of this adventure that we call life. And this is why I love the work that you do, is because you are you have this mindset of can do. And I think the best way to explain it is I'll give you my father-in-law is 82 or 83 years old. Um, and has his social security, just small pension coming in, nothing major. But one, he lives a very simple lifestyle, and has very simple just tastes, but is very happy, but has not stopped being an entrepreneur, right? Like has a YouTube channel, is already thinking about writing a spy novel and an idea that he's had for many years. And so I think just constantly thinking about how to be as resourceful as possible. My mom is the same way too, right? She is in her early 70s and she is constantly thinking about how she can continue to give back, to be service to her community, to volunteer. But then there are family members of mine that cannot figure out how to think bigger, outside the box, a bigger life, a different life, perhaps a better life, a life with more meaning and more purpose, like just cannot get out of that kind of headspace. So I think your mindset and how resourceful you are is incredibly important in any phase of your life.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's why I love your combination of the behavioral side of things and the really how do we think and what is our mindset tied in with the practicalities of finance and investment and vehicles and all of that, because for so long that industry and most industries have taken the humanity out of it and tried to make it just very much about you know der- derivatives and the financial vehicles and so forth, not
Yeah.
human being. And so what advice do you have for people who are trying to find someone to support them. So they may not have a financial advisor or financial planner or someone. And of course, our money is a very sensitive topic. Many people grew up in cultures where you don't talk about it. And so it's an area where we feel quite vulnerable and don't have a lot of strong boundaries. What are 3 or 4 things that people should make sure that they are looking for when they're looking for the right financial advisor for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know how the rules are in Canada, but I'll say, so what's there are a lot of people out on social media giving financial advice that are not credentialed, and they're not advisors. And because they're not advisors or not in the industry, they are not regulated, right? And they're also sometimes charging for advice, which is crazy because they're not regulated and they're charging. Whereas I am a financial advisor and I am regulated under the SEC and all the rules and compliance. And so being, which comes with it, is I have to be certified in order to charge for financial advice. I have to be credentialed. I have to take my continuing education. So one is really understanding, okay, who is this person that's talking to me and giving me advice, right? Are they an expert? Are they credentialed? Are they regulated? Okay. And then ask yourself, there's a lot of noise out there, and some of the advice is great. Some of it's not great. But at the end of the day, is that advice meant for you? Meaning, do they know about you and your life and your challenges and your goals? Because that advice might be great, but it might not fit you and your life. And I say this because I come across many prospects and clients that come to me and say, hey, I did XYZ because, I saw it on YouTube, or my friend told me I should open this kind of account, and now it's not working out for me. I'm like, yeah, it's a great idea, but not for you at this point.
Exactly.
And that's why it's really important to work with someone who knows what your goals are, right? And so they can give you the right advice at the right time.
Right. I just did a big rant on social media about choosing the right business advisor, coach, program, etc., for you at the right stage. Similarly, because the advice you may be getting may be right for a different person, or at a different stage of your evolution, but not right for where you are right now. And so it's so important to vet those people to make sure they're, like you said, they're speaking to you where you are at, and that they get it, and that they're not using cookie cutter solutions, because cookie cutters are for business models or for for cookies, not for business models or financial plans. So they need to be aware of, are they credentialed? Are they legitimate? Do they have oversight? And do they know what the hell they're talking about? Secondly, are they dealing with you as an individual and taking your goals and challenges into account? And then what else? How do we choose the right person?
Personality, someone that you feel comfortable with. I'll give you an example. Someone came to me because she had said to her therapist that she was looking for an advisor that she could cry to, right? And so that's how we were connected. And I think that's really important. You need to find an advisor that you feel comfortable talking about money with. Like you said before, in a lot of cultures, talking about money is not proper. It's taboo, which I think only does those individuals and that culture a disservice, right? The less we talk about it, the more that hurts us. So that's number one. But yes, finding an advisor that you feel comfortable talking about money, and an advisor that will also listen to you and honor and respect your decisions and the way you kind of want to manage your money. Because at the end of the day, it's your money, your life, right? And so what you're looking for is someone to obviously educate you so that you can make those empowered decisions about money, from a place of with information, right? Like I often say that I want to be a coach and I want you to be the elite athlete. And I want you to be the elite athlete and you're making the right decisions, because we've built a good relationship. Hopefully I've taught you good tips and habits, but it's still your choice and your decision because it's your life. And so you want to find an advisor that respects that. And I say that too, because like, there's so many stories out there that I've experienced that I've heard of, but I worked with a client one time who said the advisor put her into different strategies that she did not want to be in or agree with. And the advisor had said, okay, we won't do it. And then you know what happened? The advisor went and put her into those strategies.
Yeah.
Right? Like just overruled her wishes of, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. No, no. Yeah, that's very patriarchal. So tell us a little bit about, because I want to wrap up here fairly soon, but there's so many things that I want to ask you. And I love the heart that you bring to this, Carol, and the kind of the very holistic perspective. So nowadays, people are living a lot longer than we used to. And the notion of retirement existed from a long time ago, from the industrial age, because they wanted to get rid of older workers and bring in cheaper workers. Now it still exists for that purpose, but people used to retire at 65 and die at 75. Yep. Or, but now we don't. Now we're living to 90, 95, 100, 105. And most people haven't adjusted that in their thinking and their so that's why 65% of people can't afford to retire. What do we need to shift in our thinking about retirement for those who are not retired yet, but those who are? What do we need to think about when it comes to retirement and money? That whole notion.
It's interesting too, that 65, and that's called anchoring, which is a behavioral finance, kind of a psychological bias. So have you heard that term, anchoring?
Yep.
Yep. So we're all anchored to that number 65. And we think that is the goalpost, the barometer in which we need to like work towards. And I think that it would be very prudent for many of us to consider that might not be the age that we consider retiring. But then we also, it's like you said, it's probably further out. Maybe retirement is 75. Like I said, my father-in-law, he's 82 and still working. But we also have to redefine what retirement means, right? The old way of retirement was, you worked at one company for 30, 40 years, you get a pension, you get Social Security, and your retirement lasted only like 5 to 10 years, and then you passed away, but you weren't doing anything. I think today we have to redefine what retirement means. And I think that means like the work that you're doing. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It just means that you're being more creative and more resourceful about how your businesses work and the cash flow that comes in. And I do also want to end it with like, I love the questions that you've asked, but I want to kind of simplify things. Like, right, there's a lot of noise out there, and really it's just keeping things very simple. I think oftentimes we're looking for the magic bullet. We're looking for the easy way to achieve our financial goals, but it really is just simple, prudent steps. Spend less than you make, or perhaps it's make more than you spend, right? Get out of debt, or over time, slowly get out of debt, and save and invest over time. Then we get really bogged down by, okay, what's the best way and the quickest way or the flashiest way to do it? But it's really just those simple steps. And my parents are a reflection of that. Again, reminder, they barely graduated high school, worked at a factory, and they achieved financial freedom because they just followed simple principles and tried to not let the noise distract them. And there's a lot of noise out there, right? So I would say stop the doom scrolling, stay informed, not obsessed with what's going out in the media, but really focusing on, okay, I just need a simple plan. And if you don't have a plan, then that's where we need to start.
Exactly. And I love you brought up the kind of the point about urgency as well, because I think we get pushed by urgency because of that anchored belief around 65. So I just turned 65 in March, and the world didn't end. But I did have all sorts of, okay, I'm screwed. I don't have enough money to live for the next 30, 40 years. And then I went, first of all, I don't want to just go sit and not knit or golf for the next 40 years. That's
Yep.
not who I am. It's not who I want to be. B, I have options. C, um, uh, even, like if you didn't plant a tree 20 years ago, the time to plant the seed is now. And so I probably have all things, working and knocking on wood, another 20, 30 years to go.
Yep.
So now is a good time to start planning for that 20
Yep.
years. And so I think we really need to let go of the urgency and that, like you said, that sense of doom
And
of,
that old story
yeah, and the old story. It's
of
not,
that it's at 65 and then that's it. Your life is over. You don't provide any kind of value to society. That's terrible. I'll say this. I am going to be 47 next month. And when I turned 40, I had said to myself, I don't like the idea that society is telling me that at 65 I have to retire and that's it. Like 25 years, like, are you kidding me? So I decided that, you know what, I'm going to live to 120 years old because I like the idea that like I still have another 80 years. And so I'm not anchored to, okay, 65 is going to be where I
yeah,
peak and then that's it. Right. So I
exactly.
don't
Well,
want that.
yeah, and in Canada, they had for a long time a campaign called Freedom 55. I don't know if it was in the US as well, but it was, I think, propagated by one of the large investment companies, and it was Freedom 55, trying to get people to shift off of that 65. So that your goal was you're going to retire early, you're going to retire at 55,
Oh, yeah.
travel and all of that stuff while you can, and so on, because at 65 you're going to be decrepit. So really, we need to stop buying into the notions and decide and define what is the next chapter. And that's really, I think, the most empowering way to think about it. In the next chapter, what do I want to be the case, and what do I need to do to make that happen?
Yeah.
And whether that you're going to decide I'm going to retire at 55 and go sail around the world for 2 years, and then I'll come back to work or whatever.
Yeah.
That's you writing and defining your next chapter. And we still get to do that at 65 and 75 and 85. You're
Yes.
daily to continue to work. He's still defining his future his way. And so part of what I really love about you, Carol, is really how much of a stand you are for that. And often I have speakers on here that are 55 and up, but I make exceptions when the person is smart enough to add value at whatever age they're at and speak to where we are. And so I love the heart that you have for really embracing the whole person, where they're at, and getting them where they want to go to the best of their ability and your ability. And I think that that's a big part of what we need to do is look at money that way. Look at it as the vehicle, not the end result. And how are we going to define what that future is going to look like, and then how do we make that happen, because there's a lot of ways to make that happen, right? So what kinds of thoughts or tips would you like to leave people with?
Ooh, I thought about this in preparation.
Actually,
So
before we go there, you've got a gift for people. So tell people what that is and how they can get it.
yes, it's a 30-minute complimentary Ask Me Anything session with me. And it's to do just that. Ask me your top of mind burning question related to finance. And I will say, I'm not giving financial advice during this time, right? I can't, right? Because I am regulated. But I think that this would be a wonderful opportunity for people to ask the questions that they have to someone who's in the industry and to help them to be creative about what they should be thinking about, maybe how to help them think of asking themselves better questions. And very often I'm directing them to different resources or to different individuals. So that is something that I would love to offer your community.
Thank you. So the link for booking that call will be in the show notes. So please do click on that, and please take Carol up on it. As you can tell, she's very compassionate and approachable, and people who want to be able to cry about their money ask for her and so and get sent to her, which I think is a beautiful actually recommendation. It should be on your website. And because it means you just hold a safe space for wherever they're at.
Yes.
Really valuable. Um, there was a point about that I was going to make after. Oh, yes. So you're in the US. Are you limited to your state, to the US, to the whole world? I know financial principles transcend borders, but is there any limitation to who can call you?
Yes, so we're only we serve clients only in the US.
Okay. So in terms of serving them, in order to be able to work with them going forward, you can only serve those who are in the US.
Correct, correct. But if anyone has questions around money in general, for sure, it doesn't matter where you come from, because a lot of this has to do with just uncovering some of your limiting beliefs and trying to create different ways to reframe some of the things that you're thinking about. Yeah.
All right. And I just want to say and advocate, if you are looking for not just a financial professional to help you personally, but someone to come in and speak to your organization, your group, or whatever, I recommend Carol. She's very clear and understandable and makes it accessible. Okay, so what would you like to leave us with?
I would say that financial power doesn't come from having all the answers, right? But it does come from being willing to figure out how to ask better questions. And maybe it just simply starts with we've been talking about this. What does financial independence or financial freedom look like for me, really? And not for anyone else, but what does it look like for you? And then build from there. There's a Warren Buffett quote that I like. We don't have to be smarter than the rest. We have to be more disciplined than the rest. And I just want to emphasize, like, it's not about having all the information and all the knowledge, but it does start with asking better questions.
I love that advice in life in general. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Please share this episode, like, subscribe, and share this episode with people, because there are so many people who are worried about money, who are worried about themselves and their futures right now, who are worried about, oh my God, I made the wrong choices. Now I'm, doomed. They just need to hear this voice of calm reassurance saying, there's still time. You can do this. You can get into control of your financial situation. It's never too late to learn. I'm working with an accountant, a bookkeeper right now, to pull my head out of the sand and get on top of really controlling or stewarding my money better. And I think it's really valuable to have these conversations. So share the podcast and then sit around and talk about the ideas and with a group of your friends. Have this be a conversation that lives in your life, doesn't just end after you've turned off the platform. So thank you, Carol, for your commitment and your passion, your absolute stand for people to have the kind of freedom that they deserve to have. Really.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. I so appreciate the work that you do, and I'm so grateful that our paths have crossed.
Thank you very much. All right, everybody, please like, share, subscribe. And if you have questions, reach out to Carol in the link below, and keep an eye out for the vault that's coming up. We are building out a great resource and tool for you that you really want to keep your eye out for. All right, bye, everybody. Have a bodacious week. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.